Welcome to part 4 of our lab on measurement, in which we'll be looking at taking temperature measurements in degrees Celsius. Here we have 3 different samples of water. One sample that's boiling, one sample that is at room temperature, and one sample that's full of ice. We also have 2 different thermometers. You can see here we have both a digital thermometer here on the right and an analog alcohol thermometer here on the left. All right, let's take a look at the ice water first. We're going to start with our digital thermometer. The analog thermometer functions much the same way. It takes a little longer to come to temperature, so I'm going to stick that in our room temperature water and let that sit for a minute. All right, now I've got this in my ice water. I'm going to gently swirl this around. I'm going to not touch the metal post with my fingers. I'll make sure I'm not transferring any heat energy to it. Make sure that the temperature here is equilibrated all throughout the sample. Now it will take a few minutes for the temperature to equilibrate between the ice water sample and the thermometer. So you've got to give that time to get down to temperature. Let's take a look at where it's at. As you might expect, we see here that we have a temperature of 0.0 degrees Celsius. Let's take a look at the room temperature water next. All right, now we'll do the same thing. Stir this around and let it equilibrate. Let's take a look at where this measurement is. .2 degrees Celsius. We're gonna let that sit a minute, and while we can, examine where our alcohol thermometer has gotten to. You see right there, it's changed just a little bit, 22.1. Our alcohol thermometer is showing us a temperature of approximately 21 point, just about a little over 21 before I took it out of solution. So you see that there's a little discrepancy between these 2 thermometers. Our digital thermometer seems to have settled on 22.1. The analog thermometer does have a slightly higher, has the exact same amount of precision. It's a little more difficult to read. We read this just like we'd read any of our volumetric glassware, seeing where that red line falls between our 2 measurement marks. Now our final sample is of our boiling water, which I have pre-boiled because watching water boil is boring. I'm going to take this and again swirl this around, make sure that I'm nice and equilibrated, and give this time to come to temperature. Now I realize we're a little off screen here, so you can see here I've still got this in our sample. Let's take a look at where our thermometer measurement is so far. Having a bit of a time settling on single value. Now a sample like this, you don't want to rest the thermometer on the bottom of the beaker because then it might start measuring the temperature of the hot plate. You want it to measure the sample of the water that you're in. See that this thermometer seems to be telling us that our boiling water is approximately not settling down to a single temperature. There we go. We'll call that 100.9 degrees Celsius. So we had a nice steady beat for a few seconds there. You will run into scenarios where there'll be some slight changes in your reading. And what you want to look for is a space where it's consistent and seems to steady for a bit. So here we have our 3 different measurements. With the digital scale, the digital thermometer, we just record all the numbers that are on the screen. With the analog thermometer, we measure it just like we measure our other volumetric readings.